give this young guy a round of applause. So Conservative leadership candidate Pierre Poilievre says he's going to defund or cancel or get rid of the CBC. Can he actually do that? And if he does it, how's he going to do that? To discuss this, I'm joined today by Lorrie Goldstein, my colleague. Lorrie, what do you think of the promise? And what do you think of the chances that Poilievre will actually pull it off?
I think it's great for him in terms of the Conservative leadership race. It distinguishes himself from the others. He's shown that he doesn't need the CBC or, for that matter, liberal media to get out his message because he's mastered social media. Could he do it? Yeah, he could do it if he gets a conservative government. He could do whatever he wants. He could cancel their budget, move their budget down to zero in a year. Will he do it? I don't think he will do it if he ever becomes prime minister. But I think what he would do is he would rein it in by controlling and reducing its budget.
Yeah, my fingers are crossed. I remember seeing one time when the Harper government was in power, a study that a survey they had done where over half of Canadians wanted the CBC to get no more funding, but no less. About a third wanted it to get less funding, and 12% wanted it gone completely. I would have been among the 12%. If there was a subset of the 12% for people who want it done immediately as of this afternoon, then put me in that group too. I find the whole idea of the CBC offensive in a multi-channel universe where everyone else has to pay for whatever it is that they're interested in. I mean, I sat down the other day with the family and said, look, we have 8 streaming services that we pay for. Why is it that the CBC has a streaming service called GEM that is free? It's free because they get $1.5 billion a year from taxpayers. So I just find the whole thing outrageous that the CBC still exists. And it is so smug. I mean, the president of the CBC last year called it a beacon of truth in a confusing media world. Excuse me. You're no better or worse than the rest of us in the media. And so I'm appalled by that. I'm insulted by it. I'm outraged by it as a taxpayer. I'd like to see them gone. But the instant you say that, the instant you say, okay, I'm going to, as if I'm elected prime minister, I'm going to get rid of the CBC, then the legions of elites in the country to whom the CBC caters, they then all line up and start saying, oh, you're going to destroy democracy. And that is actually an argument that gets used when you talk about defunding the CBC. You're out to destroy democracy. And so it becomes something that you have to be very politically courageous in order to do.
Yeah, look, there's also, even Pierre Poilievre has talked about when he's from Quebec, that there are certain, the French language, radio and television, they may be doing things that others don't. But on the big issues, I mean, we all know, why is the CBC carrying the Stanley Cup playoffs? They can't find another private streamer to do that. Why do we watch Coronation? Why do we watch, now Coronation Street's great, but why do we watch, foreign produced stuff on the CBC? There are all kinds of private networks that can do that. Now, are there certain things, remote areas, reaching out to certain minority groups? Sure, there may be a function for that, but I think you hit the nail on the head. They're just like the rest of us. That's the point. We at Post Media have a conservative view of the world. They have a liberal view of the world. Now, all media today, and there are certain things I object to, get some form of government subsidy. So does Post Media. But we are not the state-funded broadcaster. And now CBC not only competes with the private broadcasters have been going crazy for years. Newspapers were out of it because, but now they're online. They're competing with us directly. They have no bottom line. They take away some of our best people, and there's no restraint on them in that. The other thing that I find interesting is what you said. You ask any Canadian today, well, CBC, they're sort of left-wing progressive. How did that happen? They're supposed to be the national broadcaster. What they do is they basically excommunicate most of the country west of Ontario, with pockets, throughout the rest of the country. They are centered in Toronto. They are part of that triumvirate of the what we call the Laurentian elite in Ottawa, Montreal, and Toronto. And it's just why does this thing exist in its current form? The Americans have a different form of public broadcasting system. Even the BBC is different.
Yeah, it's the bias, of course, that it comes down to for most of us, particularly those of us who are center right, because we never see ourselves reflected in what's broadcast. Although that's unfair for me to say that I would not see myself reflected in the broadcasting on the CBC, because I have not watched the CBC in 10 years. Maybe they've made some great changes and I just am unaware of it. But my guess is that they haven't made any changes and it's time to just yank the plug. It would be a big political do for Poilievre to do it. Aaron O'Toole promised that he would get rid of the digital streaming service and cut English television by 50%. He didn't even come close to that. I mean, he never got in power, but as soon as he became the leader, he forgot all about that promise. Harper had talked about keeping CBC budget steady so that over time it would reduce the budget of the CBC, and he did that pretty much for sure. But one of the first things Trudeau did when he came back in was to say, "Oh, here's more money for the CBC. I'll give you back what Harper kept from you and give you extra." And that group that likes to vote Liberal would be enraged by cutting the CBC. I think 6 months after it was gone, they wouldn't remember it had been there. But for those 6 months, you'd have to be a very brave person indeed. And I don't know what Poilievre is or not.
To me, the comparison would be the symbiotic relationship between the Liberals and particularly Trudeau and CBC. He ups their budget. They are who they are. Was similar to the Trudeau family with the charity. Yeah. It was mutually beneficial, and it shouldn't be. It just shouldn't be.
No, exactly. Okay, so now that Lorrie and I have disqualified ourselves from ever getting job offers from the CBC, that's our topic. That's our topic for right now. If you have a comment, leave it below. Please make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on all the major social media platforms.